It is 7:07 on April 15th, and I'm calling the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities to order a few minutes late. Councillor Flowers, you'd like to be recognized. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to state publicly, the solicitor had advised Councillor Rotundo and me that because the two of us represent a quorum of the Public Services Subcommittee of the City Council, that if we are both in attendance at a Finance and Facilities meeting, we just need to state on the record that that is the case. So I just wanted to enter that into the record officially, because we're both here.
Okay. So Laura, if you need, we'll revisit that. And before we go any further, I'm going to announce that we are being broadcast on BevCam, and it's being recorded by BevCam. And I am also going to record the meeting as the belt and suspenders type of approach. And then BevCam will have another recording available to them should the live broadcast over the internet not be most fabulous from a quality point of view. All right, so you're all being recorded. You're being double recorded. Okay, so the recording has started, and the first item on our agenda is the approval of meeting minutes from our last meeting, February 26th. I would like a motion. This is your chance all to get into the meeting minutes for the next meeting or for this meeting. Who wants to make a motion to accept those meeting minutes?
So moved.
Mr. Manzo, do I have a second? Kim, thank you for the second. All right, so again, I'm looking at all you guys in gallery view, and I don't know how familiar you are with Zoom, but if you want, you too can get in gallery view, and then you can see everybody at the same time. Ms. Coelho often does not come off mute, but rather gives us a visual signal instead. And so she has seconded that motion. Are there any comments, any corrections? Anybody want to say anything about these meeting minutes?
I just have one.
Yes, Mr. Manzo.
I think Dot's name under the B&G update, it says Assistant Superintendent Dr. Doherty Flaherty. It should be Dorothy, right?
Okay, she's nodding in agreement. All right, so Laura, did you get that correction? Okay, fantastic. So we'll make that correction. Any other comments or corrections on the meeting minutes from February 26th? Okay, so all our votes have to be done by roll call. So I will now do a roll call vote of who wants to approve these meeting minutes. I'm going to go left to right across the screen this time. Ms. Coelho, vote to accept these meeting minutes with the correction.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Myself. Yes. I think those are all our voting members. Jean, do you get a vote? Can you remind me? I'm a little rusty.
I don't think so.
Okay, so that would then pass 1, 2, 3, 4 to 0 with 2 of our public members missing. They're not in attendance this evening. Okay, the next item on our agenda is our buildings and grounds update. That was given to us in a report. You all should have received that report via email. I do not see on our call anyone from D&G. I had hoped perhaps Mr. Collins might have joined us this evening, but I don't see him on the call. Let me just look real quick. I do not see him. Okay, so does anybody have any questions on the B&G report that they'd like to pose?
I just have one question. I don't know if it's addressable. I just wondered what kind of work's being done in the buildings now that they're out of use, out of service. I don't know if Sue or Jean know.
Yeah, I think so. I can tell you that they are operating and performing, I think, some of the summer tasks that they would typically do. So they're waxing and stripping and waxing floors in that order, not the other way around. They're addressing some of the maintenance that would be done in the summer. So they're working really hard to do a lot of things and try to get ahead, especially since we do not know what the summer months brings us in terms of buildings usage or any of those things. So they're working a summer schedule and they're working on summer projects.
Okay, so I apologize. All I had to do was say that I had hoped that Mr. Collins would attend, and he joined. He was in the waiting room, and I just admitted him. Mr. Collins, welcome. Apologize if you were in the waiting room a long time. That's kind of a new Zoom security feature, and I'm not real handy dandy trying to run the meeting and watch all of the gallery view, see if anybody has their hand up, and watch the waiting room. So, Mr. Collins, we are just now on reviewing the building and grounds report. And there was one question posed from Mr. Manzo about what's happening in the buildings right now. And Dr. Turek did answer, saying that she's giving the maintenance staff is kind of doing some of the summer work, like stripping the floors and then reapplying. If there's anything else there that you'd like to answer, you're certainly welcome to unmute yourself. And you know what, can you even hear us, Mr. Collins? All right, so again, for everybody on my view, I see that Mr. Collins has joined the meeting, but I don't see a microphone next to his name. So perhaps he is in on the computer and has not joined with computer audio. So I'll watch, and if he joins again, not that I doubt. Right now I see a little message that he's connecting via audio. We'll give him a chance to speak in a minute, okay? And we'll come back to him if we want. All right. Not that I doubt Dr. Turok's answer by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, I'm sure he can elaborate on that quite better than I did.
That's okay. You know, we asked him to attend, so it would be nice if we gave him a chance to speak if he were so inclined. All right. Any other questions on the B&G report? Okay. So the next order of business, Jean, I believe at this point in time, you want me to share that presentation?
Please.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, hold on, everybody. Hold on to your hats. This is like magic. Okay. I'm going to open this in slides, and then I'm going to share my desktop. Okay, so hold, please, while we try to work the magic of technology. I'm going to share my second screen, and all right, are you all seeing a lovely orange slide?
Yes. Can we go into present mode?
You could ask for that to happen. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right.
So I have a little presentation to make, and then I will put this out to the whole committee. I put it into Google Docs with Dr. Shirocek today. If we can go to the next slide. So I'm giving an overview. It's the administration's update on facilities, school closure, finance, and next steps that we'll be taking. So on the facilities, as Tim Howland and Mr. Collins reported in the Buildings and Grounds report to that the custodial staff has earned a, sure, these people, your faces are blocking, I can't read the words.
You can either iconize that, Jean, or you can pull it off to the side. If you hover over all our
there,
little thumbnails.
I'm good. Has earned and deserved a thank you for their proactive and continual cleaning of the schools. And so we do want to make sure that we recognize the custodians and thank them for all their hard work. The other thing I have on here is that we are in the G system. We're working on what they call a hall, which should net some savings over the occupied code that we're generally working in. So that's what's going on with the facilities. The buildings are closed to the general public. We do have a few people coming in at the high school, obviously Tuesdays and Fridays for feeding the children. And we have the, McEwen building has staggered staff coming in to handle other things I'll be talking about in a future slide. Next. So the school closure, again, we want to give kudos to the food service department for serving over 300 students every day. They receive breakfast and lunch on Tuesdays and Fridays, and they receive it for three days, the day of and 2 additional days. So therefore, we're producing over 1,800 meals each day and, distributing them. And we want to thank the transportation drivers for delivering the meals to the parks. So the serving at the high school, and then we're going to some parks, which I'm sure most of you are aware of. The technology department has done an outstanding job in keeping up with the demands for the remote learning and remote working. So we want to make sure that we give them a thank you. And the administration offices are working remotely and limiting the amount of in-school office hours. So we try to make sure we're staggering people. We have the payroll department coming in 1 or 2 days working in the office, and the accounts payable and receivables in a different day. Next. And in regards to the business department, payroll processing is ongoing. The school committee approved payment of the base wages through May 1st. Accounts payable processing is ongoing weekly. We have one school committee member that comes in and reviews and approves the vendor warrants. That's a change for the members that aren't of our committee that are not school committee members. That's something that school committee had to vote, and it's only during this time. Generally speaking, we have 3 members come in, but we've reduced it down to 1, which is something that we can legally do. Accounts receivable is processing revenues as received. That is dwindling, but we do have some people that are still paying on amounts that they owed. And we're calculating anticipated refunds due to the school closure for kindergarten and preschool. And we haven't made a determination on that until we find out, are we coming back in May? Or are we coming back? When are we coming back? And remotely, the staff is working on developing the business department procedures. FY20 budget concerns that I have is the decline in the revolving account revenues. As you know, kindergarten and preschool, we have aligned that, while we're closed, there's no revenues that are going to come in for that time period. I'm concerned about the food service expenses that are coming out of the account, and obviously we're not getting in the amount of revenues. If we're serving 1,800 meals, is a far cry from what we were. We have increased unemployment costs, so we are seeing an uptick of substitutes that are processing unemployment claims. And the other thing is, if somebody had left our employ and went to another job and got laid off, their costs would be tacked on to ours because we're in the last 24 months. Concerned about decreased Medicaid revenue. That actually goes to the city side, but if we're not providing the services, we're not going to be able to get revenues for that. And the revolving account balances is something that we have to make sure that we maintain. Obviously, they can't be in the negative. So therefore, we have to make sure that we look at that when we're reviewing the accounts. Next. My next steps. So what we have to do is we have to review and comb both the revenue and expense accounts for deficits and surpluses. So we do anticipate there's some accounts that are going to have surpluses, but there's going to be accounts that are going to have deficits because we're going to not have the income coming in the revolving account, that we're going to have to move those expenses into the appropriate account. So that's the next step, would be transferring the expenses charged to the revolving into the appropriate account. We need to forecast expenses for the remainder of the year. As I spoke earlier, the building being on the holiday mode, I'm not sure what that savings will be, but I am anticipating some sort of savings, but it's also coming at the tail end of the winter, so the heating costs are not going to be substantial because, it's March, April. Budget transfers if necessary. So I am anticipating that when I come to my next finance and facilities meeting next month, I will have budget transfers for the items that we talked about earlier. And then, of course, the end of year closeout. Next. So if anybody has any questions, after the questions, we will then review the reports that you normally see, your revenue, expenditures, gifts to schools. I do not have any transfers this evening.
Mrs. Visnick, you're muted. Ms. Visnick, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. I said I'm going to stop sharing my screen, so the slides are no longer visible. And Ms. Coelho, I see that your hand is up, and I also see that Mr. Collins is in with his audio, and I'll call on him next if he wants to say anything. Ms. Coelho.
Jean, I have a question about the budget. So I have had some constituents come and ask me where we are not collecting that kindergarten revenue and some of the other revenue that was expected when we passed the first budget. How is this going to affect the free kindergarten for next school year?
So we have not actually done our budget for FY21. We're still in the process of that. But I will do everything that we need to do so that we have the amount in the kindergarten revolving we're anticipating for that to have the free kindergarten next year.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump over to Mr. Collins. If you would like to unmute, we'd like to give you a chance to speak. We didn't have you on audio when it was your spot on the agenda. There was one question on the B&G report from Mr. Manzo around what's happening in the buildings right now as a general rule of thumb as they are unoccupied.
Can you hear me all right at all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I heard most of the questions, so I'll try to anticipate what you actually asked. The custodians are still in, we're starting a top-down cleaning, anticipating, fingers crossed. I don't know how realistic it is, but fingers crossed that, we can return sometime in May and finish out the school year in the building. So we're doing a deep clean of the entire building on the bigger building, starting the top floor, working our way down. Without trying to completely tear the buildings apart, just so that we can be ready to return. So the custodians are quite busy taking care of the buildings in that regard. I think the other question was about utilities, but as we did point out, we've got all the buildings in unoccupied mode, which helps quite a bit because in the bigger buildings, the high school and the middle school, there's quite a bit of motor load from fans and whatnot. And all of that would be off all the time. The lights aren't on, so we would expect some reasonably significant, certainly the electrical savings should be significant because we're not seeing the motors running and we're not seeing the lights turned on. For the most part, there's some lights that are on. So we should, hopefully realize some modest savings in the utilities for the next, for most of.
Right. So as an example, in the report, though, the second, the normal quote unquote spring delivery of oil to Centerville just happened, and we won't realize that savings probably until next fall when we don't need a delivery nearly as soon, or when the delivery happens, it'll be far less because we didn't spend our spring amount. Right. That's an example of a savings that might not hit anytime soon. It might hit next fall. Is that a fair statement?
I would think so.
Okay, yeah, he went back on mute. So that's just something I happened to notice in the B&G report.
Sorry, I lost the audio I didn't hear really any of your question.
So Mike, she was talking about the Centerville getting an oil and it's just a late delivery now. So that's probably not going to be a savings this year, but it'll be a delayed delivery in the fall.
Yeah, we'll conserve more of that oil for it to be available for next season. It, won't go to waste.
Right. I was just pointing out that we might not see, there might be savings that we wouldn't see immediately, but rather they would be seen in a delayed fashion.
Yeah. And we're certainly trying to take this opportunity to do any maintenance we can to keep the buildings as efficient as possible.
Okay, so does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Collins while we're so fortunate to have him on our call this evening? All right, I don't see any hands. Okay, so the next item on our agenda then, having seen Jean's presentation, is a review of our revenues.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Collins.
You don't have to stay for the rest if you don't want to. Okay, so the first item is the revenue report, and I have to open that up because I forgot my copy here. Okay, so the revenue report is, the same reporting that we have pretty much every month. We're anticipating that the city appropriation and contributions, including the Chapter 70, is going to remain the same for this year. We have not heard of any kind of cuts in that area. The school choice and the circuit breaker, same thing, is that we're anticipating the amount that is due is what would be our next monthly or quarterly payments. The SPED education tuition amount that we're anticipating is $108,236, and that would be coming from other communities, and they are planning on paying us just like we are paying our collaboratives. And when we drop down to the next set of school department fees, the transportation revolving, that has a balance to be collected of $15,000. Under building rentals, in the third column, you'll see that I put in a $44,362 decrease, and that would be based on that we're not going to be getting the church revenue, the YMCA revenue, and other revenues that we were anticipating up until March 4th. So all of these deductions that I'm going to be talking about in the next couple minutes is only calculating a reduction up to our anticipated return of May 4th at this time. So these numbers will grow if we do not return then. The next one is the preschool revolving. We were anticipating an additional $30,119 that we were going to receive over what we budgeted of $45,881. However, we're decreasing $15,787 of that for the preschool fees that we're not collecting during the closure till May. And then the next one is kindergarten. That one we were anticipating an additional $20,690 from students over what we originally budgeted of $373,800. However, the loss of revenue for the closure up till May 1st is $75,678. And then the only other entry we see there is the elementary strings and band. Excuse me. We had received $2,087 over what we originally budgeted. So if I have any questions on that.
Jean, I just want to point out, I'd like to put a little emphasis on your comment about our special education tuition payments coming in.
Yes.
We, at our last committee of the whole, for those of you who either didn't tune in or were not in that meeting, we talked about the fact that we're still paying our tuitions out in order to hold our spots. And that seems to be the norm in this day and age. And we could potentially not pay those bills, but then we would risk losing our student's spot in a given collaborative. And conversely, other people who send their students here are doing the same. So that's why we expect that amount of money to still come in.
Right. I would just like to add to that is as long as the other, the collaborative and the private schools are providing some remote learning. So if somebody is not providing any service, which everyone is, if they were not, we would not just pay the full price that we were estimated. As
Okay.
long as they're providing remote learning, and Dr. Shrochek can add to it if I'm not saying it the best way, but as long as they're providing a learning experience to the students.
Right. So Bethany Splansky is in touch with, along with Kristen Eckberg, who is our out of district person. And so we have a checks and balances in place to make sure that they are providing the remote services, and that, so that have justification for paying the tuitions.
Thank you.
Okay, are there, I'm going to quickly try to look through the gallery view because I'm sharing my screen. Does anybody have any questions on the revenues report? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is our expenses report. I'm not going to share that. It's like 50 million pages, right? So, Jean, do you want to speak to it? Are there any things you want to call out? Or conversely, I will ask you to raise your hand or put something in the chat if you have a question about the expenses.
Yes, so what I will give you here is the expenditure report is as of April 9th. We may have had some expenses come through that when we do our warrants on a Monday, that this was run before that. So this number is a number in a spot in time on April 9th. You should be able to see the report all came in one whole big group when they scanned it for me. But if you're looking at the report and you're looking to the left-hand side, it'll say for 2020 period 99. And then there's a accounts for, and there's an SO1. That report there is approximately 30-something pages long, 38 pages long. After that, you'll come to a part that'll say either SO2 or SO3. SO2 would be the state grants, and SO3 would be the federal grants. And last month I had reported to the committee that I forgot to print those two, and it bothered me that I forgot, but I remembered this month. So that would be the federal grants and the state grants that we have this year in addition. However, the most important part is the SO1, which is our appropriated budget. And this is where I will start scouring through. So just a heads up, on our payroll accounts equal about 80%, a very high percentage of our budget. And as you know, we're still paying everybody their base salaries. So some people we're going to have some savings because if people had overtime, that may not be going through. But it's very difficult to figure out how much at that point we are. So Dr. Shrochek and I have already started discussing this, and we both looked at the report in two different lenses and came back together very close on what we could see, where we want to look at accounts, where we need to dig deeper. So there's some accounts that I have to look at last year to see what did we pay for expenses, because some expenses are an annual contract that might not be paid out till March or April or May. So therefore I have to check and make sure we have those. So that's what I'll be looking at when I talked about my next steps. So we'll be looking at all the accounts. We'll make sure we encumber the things that are for this year that we need to do. And there will be some savings, say like substitute teachers, there's going to be some savings there. However, I just mentioned the revolving account for food service, that has an expense of going out the door of approximately $17,000 to $20,000 a week, and the income's not coming in because we're not having the sales. The only income we're getting in is the 300 meals a day that we are serving. We're getting the free rate on that. That's actually a good thing. We're getting some money in, but if we used to provide, I can't even remember how many meals Christina told me we usually serve, we would have been getting the free, you get a portion for every meal, plus we had people paying, full price for meals. The other areas that I look at, we'll be looking at, of course, is the school tuition that is on SP 860, excuse me, which is on page 37. So we'll be looking at that. Some of those expenses are gonna have to be moved out to the circuit breaker. Circuit breaker expenses moved in to that to make sure that we maintain our balance in the circuit breaker. So it's a lot of things going on that we have to look at the closing out this year and making we don't have any negatives in any of our revolving accounts, and our revolving accounts have at least maintained the balance that they started the year off with.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Jean specific to this, to the expenses, the expense report, S1, SO1, SO2, or SO3? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
So, Gene, I just wanted to be clear on this. You're looking at these other accounts up and down the expense report. Are you looking at encumbrances? Are you looking for places where you can bring money back? Are you freezing any accounts at this point, other than payroll, of course?
Right now, because we are not in schools in session, there is no purchasing really going on. There's a little bit going on if there's something that we need. That's an expense, then we're be purchasing that. But we're not going out to purchase, for an example, a new truck for B&G that they wanted until we know for sure, what we have and if, what that need is. But right now, it would be anything would go through the superintendent and myself before people enter a purchase order.
All right, I will say, and I apologize because I meant to bring this up earlier when we approved our meeting minutes. Last meeting, we voted, for instance, to do a transfer to and to create a position to hire what I like to say is a junior Jean, an assistant business manager. But in fact, between that time and this time, we had a meeting of the whole. And during that meeting of the whole, both of those votes were turned down because of our current state of affairs, right? We cannot justify hiring someone and spending that money and then very likely having to lay that person off at the start of next school year. The mayor presented the fact that we may be doing our budget in 1/12 as we head into next year. And so, as an example, Mr. Manzo, that's one thing that we quote unquote froze. We as a subcommittee had voted to transfer that money and list that position and try to hire for that position, but in fact, we're not doing that. However, all of our teachers do continue to get paid. The school committee voted for that. They voted rather that was never up for a vote, but rather we voted to continue to pay our hourly workers, including our long-term subs. So if a substitute had committed to us to work to, for instance, fulfill a maternity leave, then we are honoring our commitment to them as they would have honored their commitment to us as long-term.
And they
Well,
are
and they're working. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're working, right? I apologize. But relatively speaking, all of the salary, as Jean pointed out, 80% of our budget, on the order of 80%, goes to salaries, and all those monies are still flowing out.
Yes, and the other thing, Mr. Manzo, is that I am going to be looking at, even though it's not a freeze, that if we say had our School Spring as our, program software, if that renewal happens in, the timing happens in May, we have to do that expense. So I'm going to make sure that those are all encumbered.
All right. Any other questions on the expenses, on the expense reports? I see no hands. All right, so the next item on our agenda is is transfers, but I believe we have none this month.
None.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the grants and gifts to schools. And we do have some, so that's in our packet.
Yeah. Did you have those that you could pull up for me to read to, or I can go pull my packet?
I will share my screen. Hold please. Hold please. Hold on. Oh, don't look. That's the day job. Here we go. Here's the night job. Sorry.
So the first thing we have here that this does need approval is the gifts to schools for February and March, and the total is $2,583.79. And it tells you what it's for.
Sorry, Jean, sorry to interrupt. I would entertain a motion to accept, and who would ever say no to accepting gifts to schools?
Second.
All right, I heard a second. I missed two motions first. Karen, all right, so Laura,
Thank you.
Karen, Miss Robinson made the motion and Miss Coelho seconded the motion.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? I see no hands. I'll remind you I have to do a roll call vote. So hold on a second. I'm going to unshare my screen so that it makes it easier for me to do a roll call vote, so I can see everybody in gallery view. Okay, and I've been told I can't call on people in the same order. So I'll start with myself. I vote yes. Miss Robinson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Manzo. Yes, thank you. Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. Again, Laura, that vote passes 4-0 with our two other members of the public missing today.
Thank you.
Okay, I also failed to mention a little bit earlier, I let into the room, from the waiting room, I let in Ms. Bergeron. Again, I'm just trying to let people at home know who is in the meeting. I don't know, it's just kind of something we tried to do in our meeting of the whole as well. Okay, so officially that concludes our agenda this evening.
Did I not give grants out? I thought I did a grants.
My bad, totally my bad. Yes, you did. Hold on.
Okay.
Mr. Manzo, I saw your hand up for a minute. Were you also going to try to help me with the grants? Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, Jean, do you have that in front of you?
I can open up my
or you need me to share?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to find it because now I lost the other items on my screen. Hold please. Grant acceptance. Okay, now I need to find again the share. We're close. Here we come. Screen 2. Here we go.
Okay, so what this is that we've had increases in our grants, so there is no specific new grant to be approved, but there's additional funding for the grants. And so the first one is for the Title I, which is grant number Title II, Part A, which is grant 140, Special Education, which is grant number 240, Early Childhood Special Education, which is 262, and Title I, which is number 305. These are all entitlement grants, and they range from $83 additional to $5,687. So the total that we're looking for is an approval to increase the grants by $7,635.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. So again, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see. First thing, does anybody have any, do I have a motion to accept that the additional total grant amount? Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Do I have a second? Second, Karen, Ms. Robinson, thank you. All right. Any discussion on that? Any questions? I'm looking for hands or an unmuting of a microphone. Okay, a roll call vote. Mr. Manzo, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. Myself, yes. Because who would ever say no to free money? That's always my favorite line to say during a meeting. Okay, now I believe we have really reached the end of our agenda for the evening. Does anybody else have anything else they wish to ask or bring up that they feel compelled that was missing from our agenda this evening?
Only to say thank you to everyone for continuing to do the job. Great, thank you.
You, Mr. Mann. That's
Thank
very
you.
kind of you. again, I thank you as a member of the public. I thank everybody this evening for entertaining our first F&F meeting online. Clearly, we've had a couple of technical glitches. We're going to continue to get better at this, I fear, the more we get to do it. Dr. Flaherty, do you have your hand up, or are you just tricking me? No, oh, you're just tricking me. Okay. All right. In that case, I will take. I would like to accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. We have to have a roll call vote. Who hasn't gone first yet? Ms. Robinson, you get to go first.
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Thank you. This concludes tonight's Facilities and Finance meeting, Standing Facilities and Finance. Jean, thank you very much for your presentation. Everybody who has attended, especially my city councilor friends, thank you. And we will have another meeting, I expect, in just about a month from now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Stay safe.